Throneworld, Chapter 1, Last Wall Gatherers. Ships came into the void, each having different banners and heraldry. While it was a big force, Corland feared it was not enough. The greatest numbers of space marines gathered into one place since the Scouring, and yet compared to the Orks, it wasn't enough. Issachar came in the observation deck. There is a nice part where Corland feels alone despite being among the other sons of Dorn. And that is because each chapter gathered had their own rituals and traditions. They were brothers but also strangers to him. Issachar was glad to see such a display of power and force gathered here. They talk about their numbers and how it went, and how, well, basically Issachar wants to bring back the Legion. But their numbers wouldn't really allow it, since they were like 4,000 space marines strong. If you put the Iron Knights that did not reach the meeting point yet, they would be like at 5,000, around that line. They talk about how some of their brothers have fallen into superstition, like the Black Templars, and the implication of the Emperor's divinity. And if he was a god, the Primarchs and the Space Marines would have to be divine too. They would argue a little about this, but Issachar would call Corland Chapter Master. Initially, Corland refused the title, saying he didn't master himself. But Issachar judged him worthy to be equals. We have more talks about their current position, and it seems the Marshal was only rarely listening to Corland. They didn't have a talk about politics being a necessity, despite creating, well, this situation thanks to the High Lords. And later Issachar asks Corland to honor him and spar together. Corland refuses, telling him they'll do it later, and he walks off to confront the Marshal and appeal to his honor. The Marshal received Corland in his quarters. Corland decided to be direct and tell the Marshal they would leave tomorrow. The Marshal said no because they didn't have the numbers. Corland agreed because they didn't have the numbers. That was the truth. They didn't have the numbers to win, but they did have them to give them a chance. Terra was under the threat of the Ork moon after all. They exchange a few words and the Marshal tells Corland the story of the Eternal Crusader, the ship granted to Sigismund by Dorn himself, the jewel of the Black Templars, and how now it sits in repairs. Of course, there's a little bit of a story about how the Black Templars say that they don't build walls, their other brothers build walls, they are made for crusades. But as you can imagine, Corland was not impressed, and he asked the Marshal if he takes all his oaths serious. Of course, the Marshal agrees, and Corland tells him he takes the oath of Sigismund more serious than that of Dorn himself. That kind of moves him a little bit, since, of course, Corland was impressed with the story about Sigismund, and he appeals to the Marshal's honor. Some more harsh words are then spoken, and Corland leaves, content that the Marshal will support him in the decision to move to Terra.